Hi, everyone, and welcome to Practice Growth HQ. Now, today we're going to talk about business lifestyle by design. It's very easy in business for things to just happen, isn't it? And perhaps if the business gets bigger, if it gets better, then arguably we just end up spending more hours. Well, that doesn't sound like business lifestyle by design, does it? And so the perfect guest today is Dr. Ruth Mannschreck. Now, Ruth's background, she's a dentist and she worked in that space for a long time, but now she's also a business strategist and has set up a new company called Shoreline Strategies. And really, her life in many ways was tipped on its head when her newborn daughter ended up spending 6 weeks in ICU. So it caused Ruth to reimagine her business, reduce her hours while boosting revenue. Isn't that something we all want to do? All the way from northern Michigan, welcome, Ruth.
Thank you, Angus. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
All right, Ruth, we like to start with the fast five, kind of quicker questions, quicker answers, so people can get to know you quickly. Question one, where did you grow up?
I'm originally from New York, but I've lived most of my life in Michigan. So I'm tried and true here in Michigan.
There we go. Clearly quite comfortable with cold weather.
Yes, yes.
All right, question two, favorite book besides your own?
I love murder mysteries, but I think you're talking about a business
Business.
book.
Yeah.
And for the dental community, I would say my favorite right now is called Unreasonable Hospitality.
Okay.
It's written by Will Guidara, Guidara, and he's in the hospitality business. The subtitle is The Remarkable Power of Giving People More Than They Expect.
Okay.
And I think so much of the hospitality business or industry works well in a dental practice.
Yes, I mean, our listeners are broader than dentists. We've got a number of healthcare professionals,
Mm-hmm.
but it's fair to say that healthcare, I think, can learn enormously from
Mm.
hospitality. In fact, a lot of what I'm talking about in healthcare these days, because there's so much more competition, is certainly from hospitality. So that's a great insight. I've written down that book. I'll get hold of it. All right, question three. What's one of your superpowers?
I would say advocating for people, teaching people. I guess I'm a fixer. When I see a problem, I want to fix it. And because of my daughter's situation, I've had to change my mindset about that. And it's enabling other people to fix their problems or their challenges. And that in a healthcare situation is very, very valuable, I have found. So I enjoy
Absolutely.
that a lot.
Good one. All right. Question four. Something you wish your 20-year-old self knew.
Oh, I would say to embrace failures. I grew up learning that I needed to be perfect, and dental school told me that I had to be perfect. And boy, I wasted a lot of time trying to be perfect, and I overlooked so many things that I was doing incorrectly. And when I finally started really looking at where did the wheels fall off the wagon, that's when my business really took off and we made bigger strides.
Interesting. I will say, Ruth, that this sort of perfection has been a bit of a topic of conversation on this podcast. Interestingly, we had a guest called Janine Alice, who in Australia was the co-founder of Boost Juice and indeed one of the original Shark Tank sharks in Australia.
Oh,
And
mhm.
a previous guest on the podcast had talked about healthcare professionals being paid to be perfect. And Janine's comment was, look, there's lots of areas in healthcare that you can try stuff and, as you say, learn from your failures. And as she commented, if all you do is go, oh, well, I'm just going to stick to what I was taught at university, and in
Mhm.
many cases that information becomes old and obsolete quite quickly. So it's a tricky space, but an
Mhm.
important topic. Finally, Ruth, question five, something you're grateful for.
Oh, I'm grateful for so many things. My family comes to mind, but I would say I'm very grateful for my time in the hospitality industry. I did training for a company, and the things that I learned about how to anticipate what your client or your patient needs has been just invaluable in setting up a good practice.
Absolutely. Actually, one of our first guests on the podcast, this is almost 3 years ago now, curiously, also a dentist from the US, a guy called Mark Costas. He had a food truck, a roach
Oh,
coach, as he called it. And he said he learnt a heck of a lot from hospitality. So there you go.
hmm
Well, thank you for that fast five, Ruth. Now, look, we are going to get onto the topic of business lifestyle by design, but I can't go past your backstory, which is that you had a child and the child ended up in ICU from birth. Well, you said 6 weeks. Tell us about that and what
hmm
impact that had on your life and what life was like up until that point.
My husband and I had two little boys. Things were going great. I had just taken out a big note to redecorate the inside of my entire office. So things were looking good, but I had a big note to care for. When my daughter was born, 6 weeks was, oh my goodness, unimaginable. But when she came home, it was even scarier because she had to see 8 different doctors every week.
Wow.
And I was practicing full time and I couldn't just set the practice down. We had some responsibilities.
Yeah.
So we came up, I worked with my staff, and I think this is important. This isn't like Ruth had this brilliant idea. We worked together and we cut our hours down to 2.5 days instead of 5. And the systems that we put in place, the way we hired new people, and how they took away everything that I did that they used to say, if you don't need a handpiece or your dental license to do it, you can't do it. So I know dentists, healthcare professionals are always wanting to work fewer hours. And I think the only reason it worked for me is because I was forced. I just had no choice. We had to make this work.
Mm.
And the fellow next door was also a dentist, and he came, caught me in the hallway one day, and he said, Ruth, what are you doing? You're never here. And yet your business, your practice is thriving. What is going on in there? And I told him, and he became my first client. That's where I started coaching, was to teach other people what we did. It's very simple, not magic at all, but so important that we spend all of our energy and our time building our practice, our baby. And if we don't get to enjoy our life, it's just not worth it.
Absolutely.
So that's my motivation, is to make sure that other professionals in private practice have the same outlook on doing what they do best and letting other people do the rest.
Yes, necessity is the mother of invention, I believe the
Yeah.
saying goes. Look, there was a book that I read maybe last year or the year before. I read quite a lot, and I each year I have a kind of a book of the year. And this is a
hmm
book by Dan Sullivan called 10x is Easier Than 2x. Fascinating book. And basically, for you to, let's call it, I'm not saying you 10x your business, but in terms of productivity, you mightn't have been too far from that. You did half the hours and you increased revenue while you were doing that. The basic premise of the book is if you want to 10x your output, you've got to get rid of the bottom 80% of what you do. Now, maybe you didn't get rid of 80%, but it sounds like you got rid of 50%. And as the team said
hmm
to you, if it doesn't require a drill, if it doesn't
Yep.
require a license, you're not doing it. Honestly, we could just about stop the podcast there, listeners, and go critically look at your own business and ask the same
hmm
question. If it doesn't require whatever your equivalent of
hmm
a drill, a handset is, if it doesn't require your license, then there's no reason. I mean, one of the principles is that in business, you want to try to push tasks as low in the organization as you can based
hmm
on competence and hourly rate. In other words, and I talk about this all the time, it's like, why would we have someone, a healthcare professional who could be billing at $500 an hour, engaging in $5 or $10 an hour activities? And yet we know this sort of thing happens. And in Ruth's case, she had a child in ICU and then she's bringing the child home
hmm
and seeing 8 doctors a week. Like you had no choice, basically. This
Right.
is a really critical message. Well, look, our theme is business lifestyle by design. You've given us a fantastic backstory. I trust your daughter's okay.
She is. She just got her master's
Wow.
in rehabilitative counseling. She had quite a struggle, but she's doing great. We're very proud. She's married, having a great time.
Wow. Well, thank God for that. All right. Well,
Yeah.
so tell us about, I mean, it sounds like you've been doing this for a while. Your first client was the man across the hallway in the office. Business
Yeah.
lifestyle by design. The listeners want to know, how do I do that? Like, is there a number of steps? How does it work?
I have, let's see, there's 5 different areas that I have people take a really good look at. For example, your operating systems, robust operating systems. We all have our own favorite secret way of doing things. And if you really want to grow or scale, as the rest of the business world calls it, you have to define systems and make sure everyone uses them. Because a lot of businesses have systems that no one uses because they have big holes in them. So a robust. And I like to start with what I call the patient journey. From the first time they pick up or answer the phone, and then they get handed off to scheduling, and then it goes to step by step by step until they are in your recall system, whatever that is.
Mhm.
What is each step? Who's in charge? What are the items that have to be done? What's the quality control of each part? And how do you communicate between all those little steps? And I
Okay.
think looking at journeys like that in your office, there's a billing journey, there's a marketing journey, there are all kinds, and it helps you delineate all the steps so that you don't skip anything and your process or your system is complete.
Okay. All right. So number one, operating systems. Look, when I think of systems, it may surprise the listeners, but the company that comes to mind for me, believe it or not, is McDonald's. And
Oh, yeah.
the reason I mention McDonald's is, here's McDonald's in a sentence: a multi-billion dollar company run by teenagers.
I know.
Like, it's crazy. My son was a manager at McDonald's when he was, I suppose, late teens, early 20s. And on one occasion, he brought home one of the manuals from McDonald's. And
Mhm.
I sat there reading this thing and I thought, A, it was brilliantly written. It had the vibe just right, but also it was, dare I say, almost idiot proof. You know, like if you had a pulse and a basic intellect, like you were fine with it.
Yes. Yeah.
And listeners, we're not saying that needs to be the mindset and your practice in the sense of business you provide is much elevated compared to McDonald's. And yet, in some ways, if you adopt the approach of, hey, I'm training 15-year-olds how to do this,
Right.
then you can make that stuff stick. All right, very important operating systems. As you've mentioned, there are many of them: finance and billing and patient
Hmm.
journey, etc. What's the
And
next? Go on.
you know what? I would just put one more thing in there, that it doesn't have to be a written document. So many of my clients are doing videos,
Yes.
short videos, so that somebody can just, they don't have to ask you a question about what to do. They can just go watch the video again and it walks them through step by step. It's so easy to make videos. And I'm finding that employees will watch videos faster than they'll read a document.
Yes, indeed. And I'm just trying to remember the name of there's AI software. Look, there's multiple ones, but there's one that sticks in my mind. It might be called Scribe. It's certainly got the word scribe in it. I'll see
It
if
does.
I'll,
It's not transcribed. I'm sorry, I can't think of
yeah,
what it
look,
is.
we might put it in the show notes, but the beauty
Okay.
of that system is that, yes, you turn the camera on, you do a Zoom meeting of one, like you don't need any
Yeah.
special technology. It's do a Zoom with yourself and say, here's the steps for doing dot, dot, dot. And then what happens is you can turn this scribe thing on. I think it's called Scribe, but I'll find the name.
Hmm.
It will actually document literally what you do. If you click on a certain point, it goes step one, go to this domain name.
Hmm.
Step two, click on this button in the top right hand corner. And it takes screenshots and will create the
Yeah.
process so that someone can watch the video. And that's very helpful for the first time they do it. But if they go, oh, I can remember 80% of that process, but there's that one bit I can't remember, then they can just quickly flick through the document, which will show them, oh, step seven was that's right,
Right.
without having to watch the whole video again. Anyway,
Right.
that name will come to me. Either that or we'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
All right, number two, business lifestyle by design. What's step two?
I would say to build in communication in healthcare, particularly here in the States, we have HIPAA that has to be
Yeah.
dealt with. And communication has to happen every day in meetings, not in meetings. And if you're running a practice or a business that has part time people, you have people coming and going, and it's very difficult to schedule communication. I call them morning huddles or anything where people meet face to face to talk when you only may have minutes that they overlap. So designing a communication, it's like a system, or coming up with a different way than communicating face to face. Building communication into all of your systems is so important that I made it a separate step in the
Oh,
process.
and it sounds to me, Ruth, it's a little bit of a kind of a mindset. What are the practical things that you've got to do there?
Let's see. I would say there are things that have to be communicated, like, are we ready for the day? So there needs to be, I'm just going to make up words. There needs to be a morning huddle.
Mm,
Are we ready for today? Where
mm.
are the holes that we can put emergencies, or where can doc have conversations with referral partners? What is tomorrow like? Is all the lab work here? Do we have all the doctor prescriptions? All of that organizational stuff. And we have our morning huddles standing up so that there's a real incentive to be fast and brief and get it done. But
Okay.
most of the communication happens automatically through the systems.
Okay, that's good. I thought we should spend a minute on the morning huddle, the
Mm-hmm.
standing meeting, as they're sometimes called. I am amazed at how many practices don't do these. And we've alluded at the start of the interview about the role of the hospitality industry coming into
Mm-hmm.
healthcare. And so it seems to me, we know the expression, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. And it's like, have a 5-minute huddle in the morning and go, which patient is coming in
Mm-hmm.
for the first time today? Can we get a
Mm-hmm.
little sign that says, welcome Angus,
Yep.
welcome Ruth? Make them feel like they're the most important person in the world. Now, that's easy to do once. It's tricky to do again and again, which I go back to point one about your operating
Mm-hmm.
systems. But that opportunity and that communication, and ideally, we'd like a chunk of our clients to leave the practice feeling like that they're just going to be a walking billboard for you. It's a
Exactly.
it's a small thing, but it's so important to get right.
And because, as your listeners know, when someone has a wonderful procedure, for example, root canals, we'll go back to dentistry. If someone has a wonderful root canal, they don't tell anyone about it. But if they have an unfortunate thing happen in the middle of a root canal, boy, they just tell the world.
Yeah.
So I want to set it up and encourage people. It's almost a boutique approach to whatever your practice is, anything in healthcare. If you can make people feel special, like you anticipated them, you thought about them before they even got there, they're going to remember that. Those are surprising experiences for our clients, our patients. Goes a long way.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think this is definitely something to be baking in. Now, unfortunately, our podcast is only 30 minutes, so we better keep pushing through.
Okay.
What's the third point, Ruth?
The third point is to have a high performing team. I like to go back to the Henry Ford example. Henry Ford, the car maker, he didn't even finish high school, and yet he had a mind for mechanics. So he stuck to his one thing that he knew how to do exceptionally well. And then he surrounded himself with experts. And I encourage my clients to just find, if you can't find an expert, find a champion, someone who loves to do what you
Mm,
need done, and
mm.
let them go. Let them run and do their job.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I know at one point Henry Ford was appeared before a court. There was a point in history where he was deemed to be politically a bit on the outer, and I don't know, the prosecution lawyer was kind of ripping into him, and they were trying to show that he was ignorant, basically
Oh.
because of his lack of education. And
Hmm.
his comment was, why on earth would I fill my mind with all of this kind of irrelevant trivia? He said, and this is, I'm trying to think what era this was. It might have even been sort of the 1950s, like it was a long
Hmm.
time ago. And he said, because on my desk, I've got, and I think it was like, I've got X number of phones that I can pick up. And if
Yep.
I want to know the answer to any question, I can pick up that
Hmm.
phone and ask that expert. I thought it was fascinating kind of mindset of the man who, at least at one time, created the largest automobile company on the planet.
Hmm.
All right, very interesting. High performing team. Any further thoughts on that one, Ruth, before we move on?
No, go right ahead.
Okay. Now, by the way, it's called Scribe How, listeners. I'm not an affiliate or
Oh,
anything,
good.
but that is a game changer. If you are
Hmm.
doing any procedures, particularly procedures that need to be done on the computer, you'll literally turn it on, and then as you scroll, it records, scroll down. As you go to
Hmm.
a URL, it records, click on this URL. And the
Wow.
procedure that it produces, you don't have to type in the name of the URL. You literally go step 2, click here, click. Step 3, click on this button. It's amazing. Anyway, let's keep going.
Great.
Step
Okay.
4 for our business design.
Step 4 is to create an irresistible business culture.
How do we do that?
Many times my clients come to me and say, Ruth, my employees don't care about culture. All they want is money. Whenever they
Huh.
come to me, they just want more money. It's not exactly true. And I always encourage people, when employees first get a job, yes, possibly money is the most important thing at the moment. I have been in that position myself as a college student. I remember that well. But over time, it changes. And especially young people, if you're working with young people in your office, they want more than just a paycheck.
Mm,
They want they want core values. They want a mission. They want a vision for what's good. They want to hang out with people who are moving and doing things. So having core values, I think the disconnect for many business owners is that they come up with core values like excellence or integrity, and they end up being words on a plaque on the wall, and it
mm,
doesn't mean anything. And
mm,
I ask people to take your core values and turn them into behaviors
mm,
that are identifiable in the daily actions. And then, as part of growing our team members, we ask our team to catch each other doing behaviors that demonstrate the core values. So we have prizes for the person who gets caught demonstrating our core values in the office.
what sort of prizes do you do?
Well, it depends on who it is. We have a value, a cash value that we put on it. And then depending on who the employee is that won, we try to make it something that would be appealing to them.
Okay, I really like that idea. Look, irresistible business culture. In some ways, I wish this podcast was 3 hours long because we could spend the next hour and a
Mm-hmm.
half talking about it. I think what I've learned, Ruth, is that irresistible business culture is the aggregate of many things. Like you spoke about one, catching people doing something that's the demonstrating the core values, and I'd say absolutely right. And the reason I'm quizzing you is because this thought has been in my mind for some
Uh-huh.
time. Somebody said this to me, and we haven't done anything yet. But I'm thinking about what you're saying, like you spoke about a vision. So in one of my companies, we've got a Vivid Vision session today. Cameron Herold
Oh,
wrote a book
good.
called Vivid Vision. I've written a 3-year vision for the company. We launched it 6 months ago, and every month we meet, we read through the vision together. It feels a little bit like what's that thing you guys do on the 4th of July? You all read it out together.
The, the
Declaration of
Constitution.
Independence. Oh, the Constitution. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Um, we all read it together, and then I will report on our progress against the Vivid Vision. So the team has got a sense that we are going somewhere. We're not there yet. Some of the things that are on the Vivid Vision don't exist yet, but we do those. With our values, every single week in every single team or sub team, we will go through the values and we'll vote on how we are living them. Because as
Mm,
you
good.
say, it is so easy to have some words. You can have your screensavers, your mouse pads,
Right. Yes.
your posters, and
Hmm.
they can be just our word. We have the word and then we have some text that supports it so
Hmm.
we know what it
Hmm.
means. And then every week, every single team member, there's a system developed by Toyota where you don't even have to say anything. You just hold up your hands in the shape of a circle, triangle, or cross. And the question is, you mentioned excellence, which actually is one of our values. Every week we'll go, guys, how did we live the value of excellence in the last
Ooh.
week? And then everyone holds up a circle, triangle, or a cross, and we record the averages and we say, hey, we noticed compared to last week,
Hmm.
it's a bit up or a bit down, and then we get people to comment. And as I said,
Right.
like my feeling is on this space, A, incredibly important to get right, but B,
Mm-hmm.
feels like it's the aggregate of a great many things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And it's a little bit different for different industries, but all the industries have humans as their employees, and they all deal, well, most of them deal with humans out in the real world. So those relationships, you need a guiding star for how to do it. So it's not just what does Dr. Ruth want us to do? How does this ship run? This is how we treat people. This is how we appreciate those wonderful patients who are paying our bills that we're
Mm.
caring for.
Okay. All right. Well, as I said, there is a lot in that one, but that's definitely a
Mm-hmm.
key one. And then finally, number five.
Is great leadership.
Oh, yes.
So I'm old, and I was taught that being a leader meant you knew the answers to every question. You knew exactly what to do. And I spent my leadership time telling people, this is how we're going to do it. This is what we need to do. And this is how I want you to do it.
Mm.
Leadership has changed greatly. And now young people are not interested in me telling them what to do or how to do it. Leadership now is more about asking questions and listening very, very carefully to
Mm.
their answers. So instead of me telling them what to do, my job is to paint a very vivid picture of the outcome that I want and then say, now go do this. This is the outcome, which means it has to fit all my criteria, especially how people are treated, how all that stuff has to be painted into the picture. But then turning them loose and saying, show me how you can do this. What are your new ideas about how this can be done? Requires a lot of confidence in your being able to paint a good picture for them so they know what they're doing. And I think the hardest part of that style of leadership is listening to
Mm.
them and their feedback. Just like when you review your vision and go through that whole thing, listening to your team's input, oh my gosh, that's gold. They have a different perspective than we do as business owners. And it's many times their perspective is closer to our patients or our clients' perspective, what it looks like, what it feels like to the outside world, than what we intended. We have good intentions, but the translation, our team actually is in a wonderful position to give us cues about how we're doing.
Yes. Wow. There is a lot there. That is absolutely true. Look, I want to go back a step because in healthcare, if I'm honest, what is not uncommon, in fact, maybe more common than not, is the practice principal who I will call chief technician. In other words, their
Mm,
approach is, come on, guys. Well done, Ruth and Angus. You're talking a good game here, but I didn't get
mm-hmm,
into this space to become the boss. I actually don't really like people management that much. What I love doing is my chosen profession. I want to be the ultimate clinician. And I'm going to
mm-hmm,
have to say, if that is your approach, listeners, then either you need an excellent partner who's prepared to do all of that side, or you're going to need to embrace this because if you're not prepared to embrace this, then your aspirations for practice growth, as the name of the podcast, are going to be thwarted. Like this is
mm-hmm,
not an optional extra. Otherwise, this is what I've seen happen, Ruth. I'm sure you have too. My father-in-law, a little bit politically incorrect, he would say, if you don't lead, then you put the lunatics in charge of the asylum. And what I've seen the behavior is if you don't want to be the leader, then what happens is the person perhaps with the strongest views in the team, strongest views, most strongly stated views, that doesn't mean they're the most informed
Right.
views. In fact, in my experience, if you don't lead, what ends up happening is based on what is the highest convenience for the individuals involved. But that's what I see. It's not often when you don't lead, the void is filled by someone who goes, we should do it this way, and their views in many cases in that instance are informed by what is convenient for them rather than what's delivering this amazing service, as you said.
And that goes right back to, because what you're describing is the toxic culture in the business. So if core values are spelled out, it makes it easy to say, maybe this person doesn't fit in my practice. Instead of saying, well, Dr. Ruth doesn't like her. It's not Dr. Ruth. These are the core values. This is how we all agreed that we're going to care for our patients. That's a much better, less emotional way to make decisions about what kind of behavior you allow within your practice. The older I get, the longer I do this coaching, the more I love the dichotomy that you just spelled out. One, you can either step up and learn to do it yourself, or if you're not, because the longer I do this, the more I want people to stay in their genius, in whatever they're good at. You just have to be willing to pay for an absolute brilliant expert to take over the other part of running your practice. The more I'm wanting people to do that, because there are some excellent technicians who should not be in charge of people.
Indeed.
They're not interested in learning how to deal with people. Yeah. The more I do it, the more I'm saying you can do it either way. Either do it yourself or find a brilliant person to lead the charge for you.
Yeah. Look, I guess I would say for my 2 cents, finding the brilliant person to do it for you is great, but I'm going to say for many of you, that's probably not the way. I feel like if I canvassed all the listeners, maybe you'd end up with a sort of 70-30 or 60-40 or something like that. That's my sense. If you don't, because you can't abdicate leadership. That's probably the key message here. And one of the challenges is if you do need to bring in a partner and they're not clinical, they're not on the tools, then unless your practice is of a reasonably substantial size, unfortunately, what happens, we had a previous guest on the podcast talk about this, they can become a bit of a profit suck. Now, they can be an amazing boost to the business, and if they really get the business roaring forwards, then happy day. But if you just want to abdicate this responsibility and get a quote-unquote practice manager in, who may be great at this and may not be, unfortunately, one of the results is they can just be a profit suck where you're basically paying someone quite a lot to do work you don't want to do without necessarily taking the business forward. So just something to be aware of.
Right.
Well, Ruth, thank you for your list. I'm going to replay that again for the listeners. Look, all of us want to have a practice, sort of lifestyle design. Step 1, operating systems. We've spoken a bit about that. Step 2, building in that communication into every part. Step 3, high-performing team. Step 4, irresistible business culture. And Step 5, great leadership. Just an observation. I'm reading through those 5 going, wow, there's a lot of people ones there, Ruth, aren't there? And indeed, there needs to be.
It's sexy to focus on the revenue and all the things that make your numbers go around. And I'm happy to help people do that. But what really gets me going is helping people with the softer set of skills, because this is what can make your life enjoyable and not just a drudge when you go to the office every day.
Yeah, well done. And look, certainly help you create the kind of business that you want. Well, look, Ruth, thank you so much for your time with us. If people want to learn more or get in touch, what should they do?
The website workfewerhours.com is where they can get a free little resource. From me, it's a great way to start a conversation with me. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, but workfewerhours.com is the easiest place to start a conversation.
That sounds great. Once again, Ruth, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, this is great. Thank you so much, Angus.
All right, everyone. Well, we've covered a lot there, 5 really important steps. And as I say every week, it's not knowledge that's power, it's applied knowledge that's power, which begs the question, what's one thing you can do right now as a result of what you heard today? Make sure you go and do that before you go on to the next thing. Finally, if you got some value from our time together today, then I'd really appreciate if you'd head to where you heard this show, leave us a lovely review to give us the encouragement to bring you more great content every week on Practice Growth HQ.